Most people drift. They wake up not to shape the day, but to survive it. They scroll, obey, distract, conform. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago, not as a failure of humanity, but a reality of power. Men are driven by two principal impulses: love and fear. And most are too afraid to rise. But if you're here, it means something inside you rejects the idea of being ruled. What follows is not motivation. It's discipline sharpened into psychology. Power, real power, doesn't come from being liked. It comes from building something others cannot break, the fortress of the mind. 1. Education as a weapon, the battlefield of knowledge. Niccolo Machiavelli believed that the true foundation of power wasn't moral virtue or noble birth, but knowledge, sharpened, tested, and applied. He once wrote, "It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles," reminding us that status means nothing without substance behind it. Knowledge doesn't make you righteous. It makes you dangerous. It makes you ungovernable. Every book you read, every concept you wrestle with, every mental model you internalize, these aren't just ideas. They're armor. They are the sharpened edges of a mind that refuses to be ruled. And in a world where most people chase distraction, the person who studies with intent gains a kind of silent power. In Silicon Valley, the founders who shape industries are rarely the loudest in the room. Many of them are quiet, obsessive readers, devouring biographies of fallen empires, dissecting systems theory, immersing themselves in the psychology of leverage. Naval Ravikant describes this as compound interest of the mind, a force that multiplies quietly in the background until one day you outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast everyone who tried to impress instead of prepare. Knowledge doesn't glow. It doesn't announce itself, but it alters your posture, your confidence, your perception of others. And soon, without raising your voice, you find yourself in control. That's the paradox. Intelligence doesn't make you likable. It makes you hard to replace. So read, not for prestige, but for survival. Because in the long game of power, ignorance isn't neutral. It's obedience waiting to happen. 2. The discipline of daily learning. Machiavelli warned us plainly. Fortune is a woman, and it is necessary, if you wish to master her, to conquer her by force. But that force, in the modern world, isn't brute strength. It's discipline. Not in dramatic sprints or rare moments of inspiration, but in quiet, relentless repetition, the kind that reshapes your instincts, your habits, your fate. Discipline is the unseen hand that bends circumstances in your favor. Consider Kobe Bryant. He didn't train at 4 a.m. because he enjoyed waking up early. He did it because most people wouldn't. That small decision, repeated day after day, created a separation. It built a fortress, invisible at first, but unbreakable when tested. That's what discipline does. It creates distance. While others sleep, you gain. While others scroll, you sharpen. The hours before the world wakes up are not just quiet. They're sacred. They belong to you before the noise starts, before anyone asks anything of you. And what you choose to do with that silence determines the weight you'll carry later. Machiavelli understood that fortune doesn't favor the passive. She rewards those who act before being acted upon. So don't wait for clarity. Don't wait for motivation. Create a pattern of movement so consistent that fortune has no choice but to bend toward your will. Before the world imposes its chaos, impose your order. Reflect, read. Plot 3 steps ahead. Because those who discipline themselves daily are not just better prepared, they become inevitable. 3. self-control before world control. If you can't rule yourself, someone else will. Machiavelli understood this deeply, which is why he wrote, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him." But the unspoken message is even sharper. If you can't govern your impulses, you will attract those who can exploit them. Every emotion you fail to control becomes a doorway others can walk through. In business, this plays out every day. A person who loses their temper in a negotiation never walks away with the upper hand. Emotion clouds judgment, and once you're reactive, you're predictable. And when you're predictable, you're easy to manipulate. The ones who hold power aren't the loudest, they're the still ones. The ones who speak less, but see more. The ones who don't just react, they orchestrate. The mistake many make is thinking that mastery means suppressing emotion entirely. It doesn't. It means knowing when to let it speak and when to silence it. Anger, fear, lust, these aren't flaws, they're forces. But only if you hold the reins. Letting them drive you is like handing your steering wheel to your worst enemy. To be powerful, you don't need to be cold. You need to be calm. Unshakable doesn't mean unfeeling. It means unmovable by the wrong things. Master yourself first. That's the only way to make sure no one else masters you. Because once they can pull your strings, they will. And they won't stop until you're a puppet with no memory of how to resist. 4. Strategic silence and secrecy. Machiavelli rarely showed all his cards. In The Prince, he admired the fox more than the lion, not because it was stronger, but because it was harder to trap. The fox survives by knowing when to act and when to disappear. That's the nature of secrecy. It's not about being mysterious for effect. It's about protecting your strategy from premature exposure. People forget that what's visible can be attacked, imitated, or weaponized. What stays hidden remains safe. In today's world, this principle is more urgent than ever. Consider Warren Buffett. He doesn't announce his next move. He studies, acts quietly, and by the time others notice, he's already 3 steps ahead. Contrast that with the modern influencer, broadcasting every thought, every plan, every weakness. The very identity they build becomes the trap that limits them. They can't shift without losing the audience they worked to impress. That's the danger of overexposure. When you say too much, you give others the power to predict you. And what people can predict, they can control. Secrecy, on the other hand, is insulation. It creates space. It gives you time. It forces others to guess. And in power games, uncertainty is leverage. So speak less, show less, reveal only what supports your next move. Secrecy isn't retreat. It's positioning. It's not silence. It's strategy. The less people know about your real intentions, the more they're forced to deal with shadows. And a shadow, by nature, can't be hit. 5. Ruthlessness in decision-making. Machiavelli never wrote the phrase, "He who hesitates is lost," but his philosophy lived by it. In his view, power wasn't granted to the cautious. It was seized by those bold enough to act without guarantees. He understood that most opportunities don't wait for permission. They respond to momentum. Inaction, to Machiavelli, was the silent killer of influence. Take Julius Caesar. When he crossed the Rubicon, he made a decision that changed history. There were no polls, no safety nets, no turning back. He didn't seek consensus. He forced it into existence by moving first. That's the nature of power. It rewards movement, not deliberation. In the modern world, this plays out every day. People stall, waiting for approval, clarity, or the perfect moment that never arrives. Then they watch someone else take the spot they thought was theirs. But the throne doesn't go to the most cautious. It goes to the one who steps forward when everyone else is still debating. The truth is, you won't always be right. But you don't have to be. You just need to move at the right time with enough certainty that others align around you. Leadership isn't perfection, it's initiative. So when you feel the pull to act, stop asking for guarantees. Decide, move, let others catch up. Because in the game of power, hesitation isn't safety, it's surrender. 6. Calculated fear over fleeting love. Machiavelli's line, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both," is often misunderstood as a call to cruelty. But what he truly warned against was the instability of relying on affection alone. Love, he knew, is fickle. It shifts with moods, with changing interests, with the winds of convenience. Fear, when applied wisely, anchors respect. It isn't about terror, it's about consequences. In the world of business, look no further than Steve Jobs. He wasn't beloved in the traditional sense. He wasn't warm or accommodating. But he was respected, and in many rooms, feared. Not because he was a tyrant, but because his standards were immovable. People didn't cut corners around him. They didn't drift. They executed, because they knew mediocrity wasn't tolerated. And that created Apple's culture of relentless excellence. The lesson isn't to become harsh. It's to become consistent in what you expect and in what you allow. Because when people sense there are no consequences for disrespect, they stop respecting you altogether. Fear, applied with control, becomes a silent boundary. You don't need to raise your voice. You just need to let your standards speak for you. And when those standards are crossed, the response must be calm, but sharp. That's not cruelty. It's clarity. In power, kindness without consequence invites exploitation. But presence backed by consequence? That's respect in motion. Let people feel that crossing you always has a cost, not to dominate them, but to remind them where your line is drawn. 7. Reputation as perception power. Machiavelli understood that power doesn't flow from reality. It flows from perception. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. That's the heart of strategy, managing appearance with such precision that others build their own illusions around you. In today's world, Elon Musk exemplifies this truth. His power isn't just in his companies, it's in the perception he cultivates. His unpredictability keeps markets, media, and competitors in a constant state of reaction. It's not always about what he does. It's about what people fear he might do. That's the edge. When others can't predict you, they can't prepare for you. In that uncertainty, power grows. Most people, by contrast, overshare. They explain, they justify, they try to prove themselves, and in doing so, they hand away control. But those who master image, their tone, their body language, the story others tell about them, gain silent influence. Composure becomes mistaken for confidence. Calm becomes perceived as control. A pause in speech can carry more weight than a paragraph of explanation. And when you say nothing at all, people lean in closer. This is the strategy of perception. You don't need to be a giant. You just need to cast a long enough shadow. Let others fill in the blanks you deliberately leave. The world doesn't respond to what's true. It responds to what it sees. So control the image, and you control the game. 8. The fortress of the mind. Your mind is your only true fortress. If it collapses, nothing else can hold. Machiavelli knew this, and his own life proved it. After exile, betrayal, and disgrace, he had lost position, influence, and reputation. But he hadn't lost his mind. He kept writing, observing, sharpening his ideas. Out of defeat came The Prince, a work that outlived every man who once dismissed him. That is the fortress, a mind no setback can destroy. You see the same truth in ordinary life. When the world mocks your ambition, when plans unravel, when friends drift away, most people break. They mistake rejection for proof of their weakness, but those who have fortified their inner world remain standing. They don't need applause to keep working. They don't need guarantees to keep moving forward. Their strength isn't loud, but it's steady. And that steadiness over time becomes unshakable. Every insult you take without crumbling, every failure you study instead of avoiding, is another stone in your wall. The fortress isn't built when life is calm. It's built in the chaos, in the days when you feel like giving in, but refuse. And when the storm returns, as it always does, you either have defenses or you don't. Machiavelli's warning is simple. Do the building now. Don't wait for crisis. Chaos doesn't announce its arrival. It simply arrives, and when it does, only those with walls already raised will endure. 9. Emotional detachment equals strategic clarity. The untouchable man never moves from desperation. He acts by design, not impulse. Machiavelli understood this clearly. He didn't waste energy fearing betrayal because he never built his power on loyalty. People, he knew, are driven by self-interest, and to expect otherwise is to set yourself up for disappointment. That detachment didn't make him cold. It made him precise. He saw the world without illusion, which allowed him to act with clarity where others were blinded by emotion. You can see the same principle in something as simple as poker. Amateurs chase their losses, driven by frustration and ego. They can't walk away, so they bleed themselves dry. Professionals, on the other hand, fold quickly when the odds aren't right. They don't cling to a hand out of pride. They protect their resources, stay patient, and wait for the right moment to strike. The difference isn't luck. It's emotional discipline. The lesson is simple. Feel everything, but let little escape. Love without letting it chain you. Trust, but with caution. React only when it serves your strategy. People who show every feeling, every thought, become easy to read, easy to manipulate. Power belongs to the man who carries emotion without being carried by it. He can be furious and still appear calm. He can feel pain but remain unmoved in his decisions. That's not repression, it's control. And in the long game of power, control is everything. The less you reveal, the harder it is for anyone to move against you. 10. The final principle, untouchability. To be untouchable is not to stand above others in arrogance, but to be anchored so firmly within yourself that no storm can sweep you away. Machiavelli's words ring sharp here. A wise man does at once what a fool does at last. The difference is not intelligence alone, it is preparation. The untouchable man isn't obsessed with proving himself. He builds quietly, layer by layer, so that when the test comes, he is already fortified. You saw this truth revealed in the early days of COVID. Businesses that had resilient systems, clear structures, and disciplined leadership bent, but did not break. They adapted because preparation had already been done. Others, those running on noise, hype, and fragile appearances, collapsed almost overnight. The same principle applies to individuals. Those who spend their lives seeking validation, reacting to every shift in circumstance, crumble when pressure comes. But the one who has prepared, who has built a fortress of discipline and clarity, stands steady. Untouchable is not a posture of pride, it is a posture of solidity. It is moving slowly when others rush. It is remaining precise when others panic. It is being unshaken not because nothing hurts you, but because you've already accounted for the pain. Noise fades, applause fades, but structure endures, and so do those who carry it within them. To rise is not to be the loudest voice in the room. It is to be the one whose presence alone commands attention. Solid, unhurried, unapologetically precise. Closing. If you want power, don't beg for it. Build it. Quietly. Daily. You won't need to prove yourself when your presence already speaks for you. That's the Machiavellian path. Not cruelty, not charm, but discipline in motion. Silence in strength. Respect earned by the ability to walk away, not chase. You don't need to destroy the world. You need to make sure it never destroys you. Comment this now. Lock, I'm building the fortress, and then prove it every single day.